Rachel Hayes rushed through the revolving doors of Westwood Enterprises, her heart pounding against her chest as she glanced at her watch. 9:47 a.m., nearly 2 hours late, again. Her brown hair was still damp from the rushed shower, and her blouse was buttoned incorrectly. The security guard gave her a sympathetic look as she hurried past, clutching her worn leather messenger bag. "Third time this month, Rachel," he said quietly. She nodded grimly, knowing exactly what that meant. 3 strikes. Westwood had a strict attendance policy, especially for executive assistants like her. The elevator seemed to move in slow motion as she mentally rehearsed explanations that wouldn't sound like excuses to Richard Westwood, the notoriously punctual CEO whose schedule she was supposed to manage. The 43rd floor was unusually quiet when she arrived. Her colleagues averted their eyes as she made her way to her desk, where a yellow post-it note stuck to her computer monitor delivered the dreaded message, "See me immediately, RW." Rachel closed her eyes for a moment, steadying herself. 6 years at Westwood Enterprises, working her way up from the mailroom to executive assistant to the CEO himself. And now it might all end because of what happened this morning. An emergency she couldn't explain without sounding unprofessional. "He's been waiting," whispered Diane from the adjacent desk, "and he's not in a good mood." Rachel nodded, straightened her blazer, and walked the long corridor to Richard Westwood's corner office. The man who had built a technology empire from nothing was now worth billions, and he hadn't achieved that by tolerating tardiness. She knocked softly. "Enter," came the deep voice from within. Richard Westwood sat behind his massive mahogany desk, his silver-streaked dark hair perfectly styled, his tailored suit impeccable as always. At 52, he had the sharp features and commanding presence that made him both respected and feared throughout the business world. His steel blue eyes bore into her as she approached. "Ms. Hayes," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Please, sit." Rachel sat, folding her hands in her lap to hide their trembling. "I don't believe in wasting time," he began, "so I'll get right to the point. Your performance until recently has been exemplary. Your organizational skills are outstanding. However," he slid a printout across the desk. "This is your attendance record for the past month." The paper showed a damning pattern of late arrivals and one complete absence. "I understand that personal circumstances sometimes interfere with professional obligations," he continued, his tone measured. "But you've been given warnings. Your role requires dependability, and I cannot make exceptions, even for employees of your caliber." Rachel felt a heaviness in her chest. "Mr. Westwood, I can explain." He raised his hand, cutting her off. "I'm sure you can, but the pattern speaks for itself." He slid another document across the desk. "This is your termination notice, 2 weeks severance, and a recommendation letter that acknowledges your strengths. I'm not heartless, Ms. Hayes." Rachel stared at the paper, the words swimming before her eyes. She needed this job more than Richard Westwood could possibly understand. "Mr. Westwood, please," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. "The last few weeks have been challenging, but I can assure you, my decision is final," he said firmly. "Human resources will process your exit. Please clear your desk by the end of the day." Rachel nodded numbly and rose to leave. As she reached the door, his voice stopped her. "I am curious, though," he said. "You were never late before last month. What changed?" She turned, hesitating. How could she explain that for the past 3 weeks, she had been stopping at Jefferson Park every morning to make sure a young boy had something to eat, that this morning, when she spotted 2 men trying to force him into a black SUV, she had screamed, causing enough commotion that they fled, but not before one of them slashed her arm with a knife, that she'd spent the morning at the police station filing a report and getting stitches. The cut on her arm throbbed beneath her sleeve, a painful reminder of the morning's chaos. "It's personal, Mr. Westwood," she finally replied, "and apparently no longer relevant to my position here." His expression remained unchanged. "I see. Good luck, Ms. Hayes." The office felt different as she packed her belongings. 6 years of memories fit into a single cardboard box, photos, awards, the silly mug the team had given her last Christmas. Diane and a few others came by with hushed apologies and promises to stay in touch. Promises Rachel knew would fade as quickly as her security access. By 5 p.m. she stood on the sidewalk outside the gleaming Westwood Tower, unemployed for the first time since college. The late September air carried the first hint of autumn chill as she began the long walk home, too numb to even cry. Her apartment, a modest one-bedroom in a part of the city that was neither dangerous nor desirable, offered little comfort. Bills were stacked neatly on her kitchen counter: rent, student loans, utilities, and the medical expenses that had depleted her savings over the past year. Her mother's cancer treatments weren't fully covered by insurance, and as an only child with no other family, the responsibility fell solely on Rachel. She sank onto her sofa, finally allowing tears to fall. Her phone buzzed with a text from Detective Miller. "The boy is safe with social services. They want to talk to you tomorrow. You did a brave thing today." Relief washed over her about the boy, quickly followed by irony. At least she'd be available for the meeting now. Rachel's arm throbbed as she changed the dressing on her wound, a 4-inch gash that had required 12 stitches. The police had been impressed with her intervention, but cautioned her about confronting potential kidnappers. They'd taken photos of the men from the park's security cameras, but the images were grainy at best. "I didn't think," she had told the detective. "I just reacted." Now, alone in her apartment, the weight of her recklessness and its consequences settled on her shoulders. She had saved a boy but lost her livelihood. Rachel's gaze fell on a framed photo of herself with her mother from happier times. "I'll figure something out, Mom," she whispered. "I always do." The next morning, Rachel woke early out of habit. No need to rush now. She made coffee and opened her laptop to update her resume, but found herself distracted by a breaking news alert. 8-year-old Michael Westwood, son of billionaire CEO Richard Westwood, found safe after foiled kidnapping attempt. Details emerging. Rachel froze, coffee cup halfway to her lips. The article showed a blurry photo of a boy being escorted into a police vehicle, his face partially obscured. But Rachel would recognize that red backpack and blue jacket anywhere. It was the same boy she had been helping in the park. The same boy she had rescued yesterday morning instead of going to work. The boy she'd been fired for saving was Michael Westwood, and his father had no idea. Rachel stared at her laptop screen, the news article confirming what she already knew. For 3 weeks, she'd been helping a supposedly homeless boy who was actually Michael Westwood, the son of her former boss. The article was light on details, mentioning only that the boy had been recovered following an attempted abduction and was assisted by a good Samaritan. Her name wasn't mentioned, and the police had promised to keep her identity confidential at her request. She closed her laptop, mind racing. Why was Richard Westwood's son pretending to be homeless in Jefferson Park every morning? The boy had told her his name was Mike, that he was staying with a friend nearby, and that he just needed breakfast before school. Rachel had suspected he might be a runaway, but his clean clothes and well-spoken manner had confused her. She'd been trying to gain his trust before contacting proper authorities. Her phone rang, startling her. Unknown number. "Hello?" she answered cautiously. "Ms. Hayes, this is Detective Miller. I need you to come down to the station. There have been some developments." An hour later, Rachel sat in an interview room across from Detective Miller, a stern-faced woman with cropped grey hair. 2 other detectives stood against the wall. "The men who attempted to abduct the boy have been identified," Miller explained, sliding photographs across the table. "Gregory Pascal and Vincent Torres, professional kidnappers with connections to organized crime. They were hired to abduct Michael Westwood for ransom." Rachel studied the photos, recognizing the men from the park. "Have you caught them?" "Not yet, but we have reason to believe they know who you are." A chill ran down Rachel's spine. "How is that possible? I've never seen them before yesterday." "Security footage shows them following you for several days before the attempt. They likely knew you were helping Michael and were waiting for an opportunity." Miller leaned forward. "Ms. Hayes, we believe you're in danger. These men failed their job and lost a substantial payday. People like that don't simply walk away." Rachel's mouth went dry. "What am I supposed to do?" "We're offering protective custody until they're apprehended." "For how long?" Miller's expression said enough. "Days. Possibly weeks." "I can't," Rachel said, thinking of her mother's treatments. "My mother is ill. I can't just disappear. Then we'll assign officers to watch your apartment. But you need to be extremely careful." Miller handed her a card. "Call this number immediately if you notice anything suspicious." Rachel nodded numbly, the reality of her situation settling in. Unemployed, and now potentially targeted by kidnappers. As she gathered her belongings to leave, the interview room door opened. A man in an expensive suit entered, followed by a uniformed officer. Rachel recognized him instantly. James Harrington, Richard Westwood's head of security. "Ms. Hayes," Harrington said with a nod. "Mr. Westwood would like to speak with you." Rachel looked at Detective Miller, who seemed unsurprised. "I'll give you a moment," the detective said, exiting with the other officers. Alone with Harrington, Rachel felt a surge of indignation. "I was fired yesterday, Mr. Harrington. I don't work for Westwood Enterprises anymore." "This isn't about employment," he replied evenly. "It's about Michael." "What about him?" "Mr. Westwood has been informed that you intervened in his son's kidnapping attempt. He wishes to thank you personally." Rachel almost laughed. "Yesterday he couldn't wait to be rid of me. Now he wants to say thank you." Harrington's expression remained professionally neutral. A car is waiting outside if you're willing to meet with him. Part of her wanted to refuse out of spite, but curiosity won out. Fine. The sleek black Westwood Enterprises SUV whisked her through the city to a location she didn't expect. Not the corporate headquarters, but Richard Westwood's penthouse in the exclusive riverfront towers. Security was tight, with guards checking Harrington's credentials at multiple checkpoints. The elevator ascended 68 floors. When the doors opened, Rachel stepped into an elegant foyer of marble and glass. Harrington led her through to a spacious living room with floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. Richard Westwood stood by the window, his back to her. He turned as they entered, and Rachel was struck by how different he looked outside the office. His suit jacket was gone, his tie loosened, and there was something in his expression she'd never seen before. Vulnerability. "Thank you, James," he said to Harrington, who nodded and left them alone. For a moment neither spoke. Rachel felt oddly self-conscious in her casual clothes, jeans and a sweater, with her bandaged arm visible below her rolled-up sleeve. "Ms. Hayes," Westwood finally began, "I'm told I owe you a debt I can never repay." "I didn't know he was your son," she said honestly. "I believe you." He gestured to a seating area. "Please sit. Can I offer you anything?" She shook her head, taking a seat on a pristine white sofa, while he sat across from her in a matching armchair. "The police explained what happened," he continued, "but I'd like to hear it from you. How did you come to know my son?" Rachel hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "About 3 weeks ago, I noticed him sitting alone in Jefferson Park. He looked out of place, too well dressed for a child who claimed to be staying with a friend. I started bringing him breakfast, trying to gain his trust. And yesterday? I arrived later than usual. When I got there, I saw 2 men forcing him into a car. I screamed, ran toward them. One of them pulled a knife." She touched her bandaged arm. "They fled when people started noticing the commotion." Westwood's jaw tightened. "The police said you refused to give your name to the media." "It didn't seem relevant." He studied her face. "My son tells me you never asked his real name or where he lived. Why?" "I didn't want to scare him off," Rachel explained. "I thought if I pushed too hard, he'd stop coming to the park, and then I couldn't help him at all. I was planning to contact child services once I had more information." Westwood nodded slowly. "Michael has struggled since his mother died 3 years ago. I've done my best, but being both CEO and single father..." He paused. He started sneaking out. "His therapist says it's his way of seeking control and independence. The private school he attends is just 4 blocks from Jefferson Park." Rachel thought about the bright, quiet boy she'd come to know over breakfast conversations. "He's very smart and kind." "Yes," Westwood agreed, a hint of pride breaking through his businessman facade. "He is." He rose suddenly, walking to the window. "Ms. Hayes, I made a terrible mistake yesterday. I fired you without knowing the full circumstances. I'd like to rectify that." "You don't need to." "I do." He turned to face her. "I'd like to offer you your job back, with a substantial raise and more flexible hours." Rachel blinked in surprise. "Just like that?" "Just like that." She should have been relieved. The job she desperately needed, handed back to her. Instead, she felt a surge of unexpected anger. "With all due respect, Mr. Westwood, you fired me because I was late while I was bleeding from trying to save a child. Your policies didn't allow for explanations or exceptions." "Has that changed overnight?" He had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Fair point, yes, I believe some of our company policies warrant reconsideration." Before Rachel could respond, the elevator doors opened and a small figure burst into the room. "Dad, is she here?" Michael Westwood, still wearing his school uniform, skidded to a halt when he saw Rachel. His face lit up with recognition. "Rachel, you're here." He rushed to her, throwing his arms around her in an enthusiastic hug that caught her completely off guard. She winced as he pressed against her injured arm, but returned the embrace. "Hey, Mike," she said softly, using the name he'd given her in the park. The boy pulled back, looking at her bandaged arm with concern. "You're hurt. Because of those bad men?" "It's just a scratch," she assured him. "I'm fine." Michael turned to his father. "Dad, Rachel's the one who saved me. She's been bringing me breakfast and telling me cool stories, and she never treated me like a little kid." Richard Westwood watched this exchange with obvious surprise. "So I've heard." "Did you give her a reward?" Michael asked. "She's a hero." "We were just discussing that," Westwood replied, giving Rachel a meaningful look. "Ms. Hayes might be rejoining the company." Michael's eyes widened. "You mean you'll be at Dad's office? That's awesome." Rachel felt cornered. Part of her wanted to accept the offer immediately. She needed the income desperately, but another part bristled at how easily Westwood thought he could fix his mistake. "I haven't decided yet," she told Michael gently. "Your dad and I still have some things to discuss." The boy nodded seriously. "Dad can be strict sometimes, but he's fair. That's what he always says. Rachel caught Westwood's eye over Michael's head. His expression was complex, part embarrassment, part challenge. I should go, Rachel said, rising from the sofa. It's been a long day. But you just got here, Michael protested. I'll see you again, she promised, though she wasn't certain if that was true. Westwood pressed a button, and Harrington appeared almost instantly. Please see Miss Hayes home safely. Full security detail. That's not necessary, Rachel began, but Westwood cut her off. It is. Those men are still out there, and they may know who you are. I insist. His tone left no room for argument, reminding her of the authoritative CEO she knew from the office. Some things hadn't changed. Think about my offer, he said as she turned to leave. The company needs people like you, people who do the right thing regardless of the consequences. As the elevator descended, Rachel wondered if he realized the irony of his words. Doing the right thing had cost her job. Now doing the right thing might restore it, but was returning to Westwood Enterprises the right choice? Or was it simply the convenient one? The security detail delivered her home, checking her apartment before allowing her inside. As they left, Rachel locked the door and leaned against it, exhausted. Her phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. Thank you for saving my son. Whatever you decide, I am in your debt. R.W. Rachel stared at the message, wondering how Richard Westwood had obtained her personal number. Then again, he was a billionaire with resources and connections. The more pressing question was what she would do next. Rachel spent a restless night considering Westwood's offer. By morning, she'd made her decision. She would return to Westwood Enterprises, but on her own terms. She called the number Westwood had texted from and requested a meeting. 3 hours later, she sat across from him in his office, the familiar space now feeling strangely different. Through the glass walls, she could see curious glances from her former colleagues. Thank you for coming, Miss Hayes, Westwood began formally, as if their meeting at his penthouse had never happened. Have you considered my offer? I have, Rachel replied, keeping her voice steady. I'm prepared to return under certain conditions. A flicker of surprise crossed his face, before he masked it with a businessman's neutrality. I'm listening. Rachel took a deep breath. First, I want to be transferred from executive assistant to the human resources department, specifically policy development. Westwood raised an eyebrow. That's quite a change in direction. Yesterday, you acknowledged that some company policies warrant reconsideration. I'd like to be part of that process. And your other conditions? A 30% salary increase, Rachel said, having calculated exactly what she needed to cover her mother's medical expenses, and flexible hours to accommodate my personal obligations. Westwood studied her, his expression unreadable. May I ask about these personal obligations? Rachel hesitated. She'd always kept her personal life separate from work, especially her mother's illness. But perhaps it was time for transparency. My mother has stage 3 ovarian cancer. The treatments aren't fully covered by insurance, and as her only family, I'm responsible for her care. The mornings I was late were because I was taking her to chemotherapy appointments that were rescheduled at the last minute, except yesterday, of course. Westwood's expression softened slightly. I didn't know. You never asked, Rachel replied, not unkindly. That's part of the problem with the current policies. They don't account for exceptional circumstances. He nodded slowly. I accept your conditions. When can you start? Monday. I need to visit my mother this weekend. Done. He extended his hand, which she shook firmly. Welcome back to Westwood Enterprises, Miss Hayes. As Rachel turned to leave, Westwood added, Michael asked about you this morning. He was quite insistent on knowing if you'd be returning. Rachel smiled despite herself. Tell him I said hello. Actually, Westwood said, hesitating uncharacteristically, he's asked if you might join us for dinner sometime, to properly thank you. The invitation caught her off guard. I'd have to check my schedule. Of course, let me know what works for you. Rachel left the office feeling strangely victorious. She'd stood her ground with one of the most powerful businessmen in the city, and won. Her triumph was short-lived. As she exited the building, a familiar black SUV pulled alongside her. Before she could react, James Harrington emerged, his expression urgent. Miss Hayes, get in the car immediately. What's going on? Security at your apartment building reported suspicious activity. 2 men matching the descriptions of the kidnappers were seen in the vicinity. Rachel's blood ran cold. My mother is safe. We've sent a security team to her residence as a precaution. Rachel climbed into the SUV, mind racing. Where are we going? Mr. Westwood has arranged a safe house until the men are apprehended. 20 minutes later, the SUV pulled into an underground garage beneath a luxury apartment building in the city's most exclusive district. Harrington escorted her to a private elevator that opened into a stylishly furnished apartment. "This is one of Mr. Westwood's properties," Harrington explained. "The building has round-the-clock security, and no one knows you're here. You'll be safe." "For how long?" "Until we resolve the situation." He handed her a phone. "This is secure. Mr. Westwood's and my numbers are programmed in. Use it if you need anything." After Harrington left, Rachel explored the apartment, a spacious two-bedroom with high-end furnishings and a breathtaking view of the city. The refrigerator was fully stocked, and the closet in the main bedroom contained women's clothing approximately her size. The level of preparation was both impressive and slightly unnerving. Hours passed in tense boredom. Rachel called the hospital to check on her mother, who was stable after her latest treatment. She tried watching television but couldn't focus. By evening, she was pacing restlessly when her secure phone rang. "Ms. Hayes, it's Richard Westwood. I'm on my way up with Michael. He was concerned about your safety and wouldn't settle until I promised to check on you. I hope that's acceptable." Before she could form a response, he'd ended the call. Minutes later, the elevator doors opened, revealing Westwood and Michael, the boy carrying a large paper bag. "We brought dinner," Michael announced, lifting the bag. "Dad said you might be hungry." Rachel couldn't help but smile at his enthusiasm. "That was thoughtful, thank you." Westwood seemed different with his son present, less the commanding CEO, more an attentive father. He helped Michael unpack containers of gourmet takeout onto the dining table, while Rachel watched, struck by the domesticity of the scene. "I got you pad thai," Michael informed her proudly. "Dad said everyone likes pad thai." "It's one of my favorites," she confirmed, touched by the gesture. Dinner was surprisingly pleasant. Michael dominated the conversation, asking Rachel countless questions about herself and telling her about his school and hobbies. Westwood remained mostly silent, observing their interaction with an expression Rachel couldn't quite decipher. After the meal, Michael pulled out a deck of cards. "Do you know how to play war?" "I think I remember the rules," Rachel said, clearing space on the coffee table. As they played, Westwood received a call and stepped away. Rachel heard fragments of his conversation, something about security footage and police cooperation. When he returned, his expression was grim. "Michael, it's getting late. Time to head home." "But we just got here," the boy protested. "Ms. Hayes needs her rest and you have school tomorrow." Michael reluctantly packed up the cards, then surprised Rachel with a quick hug. "Thanks for saving me," he whispered. After he stepped into the elevator, Westwood lingered in the doorway. "There's been a development. The police identified a vehicle associated with the kidnappers near your mother's care facility." Rachel felt her heart drop. "Are they targeting her to get to me?" "It appears so. I've arranged to have her transferred to a private medical facility with security. She'll receive the best care available." "I need to see her," Rachel insisted. "Tomorrow. It's too dangerous tonight." His tone softened. "I give you my word she'll be safe." After they left, Rachel spent another restless night, torn between gratitude for Westwood's protection and frustration at her helplessness. By morning, she was determined to take back some control. Using the secure phone, she called Harrington. "I need clothes and my laptop from my apartment." "That's not advisable. I'm starting work on Monday, remember? I need to prepare." Harrington reluctantly agreed to escort her to her apartment that afternoon with a security team. When they arrived, Rachel immediately sensed something was wrong. The door was slightly ajar. Harrington pulled her back, drawing a concealed weapon. "Stay here," he ordered the other guards. "Secure the perimeter." He spoke into his wrist communicator. Possible breach at Hayes' residence, requesting backup. Despite his instructions to stay back, Rachel followed Harrington into the apartment. The place had been thoroughly searched. Drawers emptied, furniture upturned. On her living room wall, someone had spray-painted 3 words. "We'll find you." Harrington cursed under his breath, hurrying her back to the elevator. "We need to leave now." In the car, Rachel struggled to control her panic. "What do they want from me? I didn't see their faces clearly. I can't identify them beyond what's on the security footage." "This isn't about identification," Harrington explained grimly. "It's about reputation. These men failed an expensive kidnapping job. Their employers want someone to blame." Back at the safe house, Westwood arrived within the hour, his expression thunderous. "This has gone far enough. I'm increasing security at all locations and hiring additional personnel to find these men." "You can't just throw money at this problem," Rachel argued, her fear turning to anger. "These people invaded my home. They're threatening my mother. This isn't just about Michael or me anymore." "I'm aware of that," Westwood replied tightly. "Are you? Because this started with your son. Why was he pretending to be homeless in a park? What was he running from?" The question hung in the air between them. Westwood's expression hardened. "That's none of your concern." "It became my concern when men with knives started following me," Rachel shot back. "I deserve to know what I'm caught up in." For a moment, she thought he might refuse. Then, unexpectedly, he sat down heavily on the sofa. After his mother died, Michael became withdrawn. The therapists called it selective mutism. He wouldn't speak at home or school for nearly a year. Westwood ran a hand through his hair, a surprisingly human gesture. When he finally started talking again, he became obsessed with stories about people who lived different lives, simpler lives without wealth or status. Rachel remembered her conversations with Michael in the park, how curious he'd been about her apartment, her morning routine, ordinary things she took for granted. He started sneaking out, Westwood continued. The first time I nearly called the police until his nanny found him in the park, watching a group of children play basketball. After that, we tried to compromise. He could visit the park with security watching from a distance. But he gave them the slip, Rachel guessed. Yes. He's quite resourceful. A hint of pride crept into Westwood's voice. We didn't know he was approaching strangers until you. Rachel processed this information. So the kidnapping attempt wasn't random. They targeted him knowing he'd be alone in the park. Exactly. Someone had been watching and waiting for an opportunity. Westwood's expression darkened. Someone knew about his routine. An inside job. Possibly. We're investigating everyone with access to his schedule. The realization that this went beyond random criminals made Rachel feel even more vulnerable. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. My mother is secure, Westwood assured her. I've personally verified the arrangements, but I understand if you want to see her yourself. Before Rachel could respond, the secure phone rang. Harrington's voice came through, tense and urgent. Sir, we've received a ransom demand. What? Michael is with me, Westwood replied, confused. It's not for Michael, sir. Harrington paused. It's for Ms. Hayes. Rachel felt the blood drain from her face as Harrington continued. They're demanding $1 million for her safe passage. Otherwise they'll finish what they started. Westwood's expression hardened. This is blackmail. Sir, there's more. Harrington hesitated. The demand came from your private email server. Whoever sent this has access to Westwood Enterprises' internal systems. The implications hit Rachel like a physical blow. Someone inside Westwood's company was working with the kidnappers, someone with high-level access. Her eyes met Westwood's, and she saw her own shock and betrayal reflected there. Trust no one, she whispered, the full gravity of their situation becoming clear. For once, the powerful CEO seemed at a loss. Rachel, I'm sorry I've brought this danger to your life. It was the first time he'd called her by her first name, and somehow, that small intimacy made their shared peril all the more real. The safe house transformed into a command center by nightfall. Westwood summoned his most trusted security personnel, excluding anyone with access to his private email server. Rachel watched from the sidelines as he issued directives with military precision, his usual corporate demeanor replaced by something more primal, a father protecting his family and his territory. The email originated from inside the building but was routed through multiple proxy servers, reported a tech specialist Westwood had called in. However, the timing narrows it down. Only 17 employees were in the building when it was sent. I want background checks redone on all 17, Westwood ordered. Financial records, recent activities, everything. Rachel approached cautiously. Whoever it is must have started recently. I processed all executive-level hires, and I would have noticed anything suspicious. Westwood considered this. What about contractors? Temporary access. The IT overhaul, Rachel realized. 3 months ago, we brought in external consultants to upgrade the security systems. Who authorized their credentials? Franklin in operations and, Rachel hesitated, your executive assistant before me, Jennifer Winters. Westwood's expression darkened. Jennifer resigned unexpectedly 6 months ago, said she was moving out of state for family reasons. Did anyone verify that? I'll find out, he said grimly. As the investigation proceeded, Rachel felt increasingly helpless. This was her life in the balance, yet she was relegated to watching others work to save it. When Westwood stepped away to check on Michael, she approached Harrington. I need to do something, she said. I can't just sit here waiting. Harrington studied her thoughtfully. You processed employee files. You might notice patterns or connections we'd miss. He provided her with redacted personnel files for the 17 suspects. For hours, Rachel pored over them, looking for anything unusual. One name kept catching her attention. Lucas Bennett, a cybersecurity consultant hired during the IT overhaul. His references check out, Harrington noted when she pointed him out. What bothers you about him? The timing, Rachel explained. He was hired exactly 1 week after Jennifer Winters resigned, and his authorization form has her digital signature, which shouldn't be possible if she'd already left. Harrington immediately alerted Westwood, who ordered deeper investigation into both Bennett and Winters. By morning, they had their answer. Jennifer Winters never left the state, Harrington reported. She's living in a luxury condo downtown purchased 3 months ago for cash, and Lucas Bennett doesn't exist. The identity was fabricated with exceptional skill. They're working together, Westwood concluded. Jennifer had access to everything, my schedule, Michael's activities, security protocols. But why target Michael? Rachel asked. For ransom. Perhaps, Westwood said, though he sounded unconvinced. Or perhaps this is personal. A new message arrived on Westwood's secure phone. A video showing Rachel entering her mother's former care facility, filmed from a nearby building. The message was clear. They were still watching, still one step ahead. We need to draw them out, Westwood decided. Make them think they've won. How? Rachel asked. We pay the ransom, but we control the exchange. The plan took shape quickly. Westwood would appear to comply with the ransom demand, requesting an in-person exchange. Rachel would be visibly present as bait, heavily protected by undercover security. Meanwhile, police would raid Jennifer Winters' condo and Lucas Bennett's last known location simultaneously. It's too dangerous, Rachel protested when she understood her role. What if something goes wrong? Nothing will happen to you, Westwood promised, his eyes intense. I won't allow it. The exchange was set for midnight at an abandoned warehouse near the docks, cliché but effective for the kidnappers' purposes. As the hour approached, Rachel found herself alone with Westwood in the back of an armored SUV, both dressed in tactical gear. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. We can find another way. There isn't time, she replied, checking her bulletproof vest for the third time. My mother's treatments can't wait, and I can't live in hiding forever. Westwood studied her face in the dim light. You're the bravest person I've ever met, Rachel Hayes. I'm terrified, she admitted. That's what makes it bravery. They arrived at the warehouse district with 30 minutes to spare. Police and Westwood security personnel took positions out of sight, while Rachel and Westwood, flanked by Harrington and 2 other guards, approached the designated meeting point. The warehouse was cavernous, with high windows filtering moonlight onto concrete floors. Their footsteps echoed ominously as they entered. Westwood carried a metal briefcase containing the ransom money, real cash, despite the FBI's recommendation to use traceable bills. If they're monitoring police channels, they'll know about traceable bills, he had explained. I want them to believe we're desperate enough to play by their rules. At exactly midnight, Rachel's secure phone rang. Put it on speaker, Harrington instructed. A distorted voice filled the empty space. Mr. Westwood, how touching that you'd pay so much for an employee. Or is she more than that now? I have your money, Westwood replied evenly. 1 million, as requested. Place it in the center of the room and step back. Westwood did as instructed, then retreated to stand beside Rachel. Now dismiss your guards, the voice commanded. That wasn't part of the deal, Westwood countered. New terms. Dismiss them or the deal's off. Westwood hesitated, then nodded to Harrington, who reluctantly withdrew with the other guards, though Rachel knew they wouldn't go far. Very good, the voice said. Now, another change of plans. Richard, you're free to go. Ms. Hayes stays. No, Westwood said immediately. We leave together or not at all. A figure emerged from the shadows on the warehouse's upper level, a woman with ash-blonde hair. Jennifer Winters. How gallant, she said, her natural voice replacing the distorted one. The great Richard Westwood defending his assistant. She descended a metal staircase, each step echoing. But then, she's special, isn't she? Just like I thought I was. Rachel tensed, realizing this was indeed personal. Westwood stepped slightly in front of her, protective. Jennifer, he acknowledged coldly, I never took you for a kidnapper. And I never took you for a hypocrite, she shot back. Firing employees for being late while your precious son sneaks out playing homeless. The great family man who couldn't even see what was right in front of him. A second figure appeared, a tall man with a scarred face who could only be the real Lucas Bennett. He carried a gun pointed casually at them. This isn't about money, Rachel realized aloud. It's about revenge. Jennifer smiled coldly. Smart girl. Yes, revenge for years of being treated like furniture, for being discarded when I needed compassion. She addressed Westwood directly. I was late once because my father had a heart attack. You wrote me up without even asking why. So you targeted my son? Westwood's voice was dangerous. We just wanted to scare you at first, Jennifer admitted. Show you what it feels like to have something precious taken away. But then your heroic assistant here, she gestured at Rachel with disdain. Complicated things. And now, Rachel asked, trying to keep them talking, knowing every second bought time for the police closing in. Now we take the money and disappear, Lucas spoke for the first time, his voice gruff. But first, we make sure neither of you can follow. He raised his gun, aiming directly at Westwood. Rachel reacted instinctively, shoving Westwood aside just as the shot rang out. Pain exploded in her shoulder as the bullet grazed her, but her vest absorbed the worst of it. Chaos erupted. Harrington and his team burst in from multiple entrances. Jennifer screamed in frustration, pulling her own weapon. Lucas fired wildly, bullets ricocheting off metal surfaces. Rachel crawled behind a concrete pillar, her shoulder throbbing. She heard Westwood calling her name, his voice desperate above the gunfire. Then, abruptly, silence fell. When she peered around the pillar, she saw Lucas on the ground, subdued by Harrington's men. Jennifer was cornered, her gun trained on Westwood, who stood exposed in the center of the room. "It was supposed to be simple," Jennifer was saying, her voice breaking. "You were supposed to suffer like I suffered." "Jennifer, put the gun down," Westwood said calmly. "No one else needs to get hurt. It's too late for that." Her finger tightened on the trigger. Without thinking, Rachel emerged from her hiding place. "Jennifer, I understand." The woman's gaze flickered toward her. "I know what it's like to need compassion and not get it," Rachel continued, taking a cautious step forward. "To be seen as just a function, not a person." Jennifer's hand trembled. "You don't know anything about me. I know you were good at your job. I had to learn everything from your perfectly organized files." Another careful step. "I know your father died 3 days after you were written up. I saw the bereavement request that was denied." Jennifer's eyes widened. "You saw that?" "Yes, and I'm sorry. That never should have happened." For a moment it seemed to be working. Jennifer's gun lowered slightly. Then her expression hardened again. "Pretty words won't change anything." "You're right," Rachel acknowledged. "But this will." In that moment, police officers flooded the warehouse, surrounding Jennifer with weapons drawn. Realizing she was trapped, she slowly placed her gun on the ground and raised her hands. As she was led away, she locked eyes with Westwood one last time. "You never even asked why I was late." In the aftermath, paramedics treated Rachel's shoulder wound, painful but superficial. Westwood never left her side, his face ashen. "You could have been killed," he said as they sat in the back of an ambulance. "So could you," she replied. "Why did you do it? Push me out of the way?" Rachel considered the question. "Instinct, I guess. The same reason I helped Michael." Westwood shook his head in wonder. "You're extraordinary, Rachel Hayes." "I'm just a person who tries to do the right thing," she said simply. "Something you might want to practice more yourself." Instead of taking offense, he laughed, a genuine laugh that transformed his features. "Fair point." 3 months later, Westwood Enterprises had undergone significant changes. Under Rachel's leadership, the Human Resources Department rewrote company policies to include compassionate leave and flexible working arrangements. The strict punctuality requirements remained, but with clear exceptions for emergencies and family needs. Rachel's mother responded well to treatments at the private facility Westwood had arranged, her prognosis improving steadily. Rachel herself had healed completely, though she sometimes felt phantom pain in her shoulder when rain threatened. She was reviewing policy documents in her new office when a knock interrupted her concentration. Richard Westwood stood in the doorway, looking uncharacteristically casual in a sweater rather than his usual suit. "Do you have a moment?" he asked. "Of course." He took the seat opposite her desk. "The board approved all your policy recommendations unanimously." "That's wonderful news," Rachel said, genuinely pleased. "Thank you for your support." "Don't thank me. They were excellent recommendations." He paused. "That's not why I'm here, though. Michael has been asking when you'll come to dinner again. Apparently my card-playing skills don't measure up to yours." Rachel smiled. The dinners with Westwood and Michael had become a weekly occurrence, evolving from gratitude to genuine friendship. "Thursday works for me, if that's still good for you." "Perfect." He hesitated, then added, "Actually, I was wondering if you might consider a different venue this time. There's a new restaurant by the river I thought we might try." Rachel studied his expression, recognizing the carefully casual tone for what it was. "Richard, are you asking me on a date?" He looked momentarily flustered, an expression she'd never seen on the confident CEO's face before. Yes, I suppose I am. With Michael's enthusiastic approval, I might add." Rachel considered the unexpected turn her life had taken. 6 months ago, this man had fired her. Now, after danger, betrayal, and healing, something new had grown between them, respect that had gradually deepened into affection. "I'd like that," she said simply. As he left her office, Rachel reflected on how a series of difficult choices and brave moments had led her here, being late because she stopped to help a child, pushing a man out of the path of a bullet, standing up for what she believed was right, even to one of the most powerful men in the city. Sometimes doing the right thing came with a cost, but sometimes it led to unexpected rewards. That evening, as she joined Richard and Michael for dinner by the river, Rachel Hayes felt something she hadn't experienced in a very long time. The sense that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Not because fate had arranged it, but because her own choices and courage had brought her here. The boy who had once pretended to be homeless now chatted excitedly about school projects. The man who had once fired her now looked at her with unmistakable admiration. And Rachel herself, who had once felt powerless against corporate policy, now helped reshape that policy to protect others like her. "What are you thinking about?" Richard asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. Rachel smiled, watching the sunset reflect on the river. "I'm thinking that being late that day might have been the best mistake I ever made." He reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "It certainly was the luckiest day of my life." Michael made a face at their joined hands, then grinned. "Does this mean Rachel's going to be around all the time now?" Richard glanced at her, a question in his eyes. "I think," Rachel said, squeezing his hand, "that's exactly what it means."